this. Today we're tackling the king of overly drawn out projects. I want this video to be a summary of what made me like this character enough to make the cosplay in the first place, and also a summary of where my head has been in the past 2 years to have made it even take this long. My approach to cosplay the last couple years has been the more details I can add, the better. And this works splendidly for some costumes, but not so much for others. The first costume that I did this on was Tharja from Fire Emblem. I think Fire Emblem costumes take really well to this approach because they're already so heavily detailed that adding more details or changing the details doesn't take away from the readability of the design. I love motifs and creating a design language, and doing this kind of thing was consistently a way to spice up my costumes. But it doesn't work for everything. An example of one costume it didn't work for was Foss from Hoseki no Kuni, who the more details I added, the less it looked like Foss. And the reason for that is because the series has a very straight, lined, clean aesthetic, and making something really frilly just makes it not look like Hoseki no Kuni. For Pride, I initially wanted to play into his rich kid aesthetic. I found some vests that were like brocade with really cool textures. And I think that in the end, this is before the this is before the Full Metal Alchemist live action movies. And I think those movies ultimately achieved like my original vision for this costume. You can see that they changed the silhouette a bit by giving him not flared shorts, which was not something I wanted to do. So I'm glad that they did that take on the cosplay because I ended up doing something different. After a bit, I gave up on that brocade idea and moved towards a luxe academic look. You know, something like twill, tweed with like a weight to it and a texture. I was really committed to this, and I even bought a cheap vest that fit me really well, and I took it apart with the intention of using it as a pattern to like make my own vest because I really hate polyester, and you know, I wanted that nice weighted fabric, and I never did that. I had some really grand ideas that came from the desire to treat this cosplay with the respect I thought it deserved. But after not doing anything with it for a while, I had to sit down and say like, this is a vest and some shorts, and you can buy it online in minutes. In the end, I realized that wanting to add extra details to all of my costumes had become a crutch. I can tell you for a fact that there are costumes where I have added a fancy trim to hide the fact that I don't know how to finish a piece properly. And also, I had been using this costume and this prospect of a never-ending project as like a really bad coping mechanism. Full Metal Alchemist is one of my favorite series and has been since I was about 14. I'm incredibly satisfied by the story and I like everything that happens in it. And somewhat of a downside of that, at least for me, is that because I was so satisfied by it, by the time Brotherhood ended and there was pretty much nothing new coming out, I happily took it and put it on a shelf in my mind and stopped thinking about it. Fast forward to 2015-ish, I had started cosplaying and I was mostly cosplaying from Fire Emblem. And the way that I would pick a thing to cosplay, whether it was Fire Emblem or not, was a new thing comes out, I pick my favorite character from the new thing, and then I cosplay them. And I don't want to say that that isn't fun, because it was fun. Like when they would announce a new Fire Emblem game and they would show that huge list of every character, especially when Fates came out, because they put like way too many characters in that game. It was fun to look at that sheet and be like, oh, who's my favorite? I want to cosplay them. I hope I like them, blah, blah, blah. But what eventually started to happen is I felt kind of fake in the sense that I was cosplaying new characters from new things, but there were a lot of characters who I had loved for much longer and who arguably had shaped me more, who I wasn't cosplaying. And realizing this and wanting to change it is what led to me making cosplays like Freya, Sheba, Dawn, and my favorite Gold from Pokemon. In my first interaction with Full Metal, I never really noticed Salim. I think the most I had thought about him was that he had an interesting name. But it wasn't until later that what made me like him was understanding the kinds of character tropes that I like. I love male characters who are strong in an unconventional way. Using Robin from Fire Emblem Awakening and 9S from Nier as examples, both of them fight in support roles. Robin is a tactician who fights with magic, and 9S is a hacker who hacks into his enemies. Pride is the oldest, meanest, strongest homunculus, but the way that he's dangerous relies more on being crafty and sneaking around than it does a sheer power. In general, I love characters who are not as they seem, and Salim has that in abundance. I love that Arakawa respected that he was 10 years old. By not having him like transform into a super sexy villain the moment that he was revealed in his identity. This seems like a weird thing to say, I think, but like, is that not something you might expect? Like, okay, this character's been pretending to be 10 years old, and now we realize that he's evil, and he's going to say, "Oh, you found out my identity," and then he would go like, "Ah," and he'd turn into something like, I don't know, greed. Nothing against greed. He would look like, he'd be like, "This is the real me," and that, you know, that kind of carries the idea that the only thing that can be threatening is like a sexy man, which is not true. I think that there's interesting ways that characters who are 10 years can be threatening. He's also sympathetic, or at least pitiful, to the extent that he showed fondness for Mrs. Bradley, and he even thought of her while he died. Pride is a cruel villain, but he's also someone who never thought for himself. And I think a big moment for his character is Father leaving him behind. The homunculi aren't as fully explored as other characters in Full Metal, but I think that works to their advantage. We're given enough peeks into their minds to understand the hypocrisy of what they believe, and that makes them more than faceless villains. But ultimately, we can still celebrate their defeat. There isn't much to Pride in the grand scheme of things, but I think the little choices made with his characterization represent something bigger and very well thought out. And I eat stuff like that up.
Full Metal Alchemist.
For the break this time, I wanted to show a new thing that I got that is never going to make it in a video otherwise. This is a transmutation circle area rug. It's from one of those, like Loot Crate kind of collaborations. I don't have Loot Crate, but when I got into FMA again, I allowed myself to look at like weird merch. Normally I'm very specific about the kinds of things I buy just because it helps me keep myself in order. Like if I casually like a series, like I like Spy Family, but I don't love Spy Family to the extent that I'm like, yes, I must have the Anya couch cover, that kind of stuff. But like once I was like, okay, I do really like Full Metal, I think I can buy some stupid things from it. I wanted to see if they had like a a transmutation circle rug, just because that's kind of a stupid thing that shouldn't be a rug. And that was when I first found out about this. I did not buy it right away when I found out about it. And then as I was like doing things with my room, I thought it would be really nice to have something in front of my display case. And that is when I decided to go ahead and buy this stupid little rug.
Full Metal Alchemist.
You know those corporate team building exercises where they try to have you describe your project with one single word? For me, that word would be deranged. Originally, I scripted and partially recorded a organized breakdown of every step of this project. But I think what it's falling into the same camp as is the Dolphy Dream project, where partway through I had to sit down and do a voiceover and say, listen, this was a terrible thing to go through. This project was very difficult, and I struggled a lot with it, and I wanted to make that abundantly clear. And I think that for this one, I'm going to need to do the same thing. Because that is the title of this video, that this is a very simple project that took way longer than it should have. That is the thesis. But I think it makes more sense to actually walk you through each version of this and all the different things I did for each version so that you can see the madness.
Full Metal Alchemist.
Full Metal Alchemist.
Did you know the Celine Bradley cosplay project was actually the first of my many Celine Bradley projects, which are numbering probably 50 by now. So yeah, cosplay is my main hobby, or at least it kind of was for a while. And all it started as was, alright, I like this character, I'm gonna make a cosplay, and I'm gonna do a fancy photo shoot. And that was really all it should have been. At the time I was doing photo shoots a lot, pretty regularly. I really liked to do them. And it was more about getting something that looked good in pictures than something that was maybe extremely wearable or even incredibly accurate. And right away I did have something wearable. So what we're looking at here is actually not bad. If you were not a crazy person, this would be perfectly fine. The top, the vest, and the shirt, those are both from a little boy's suit from Amazon that I purchased. I had to buy like the pants too, but I'm only wearing the top. Oh, and it came with a free bow tie. I guess it wasn't free, I paid for it. So yeah, that stuff right there was purchased. And then the shorts, those are from the thrift store, and they were khaki originally, but I dyed them gray, and the socks and shoes I already had. But the thing I like the most here is my prop. The prop was what I deemed a necessary evil because Salim's character design is very simple, and I was deathly afraid of no one knowing who I was. I actually had nightmares that I was at a con. I was with an Alphonse Elric cosplayer, like in a whole suit, and they were like, okay, I've got to go. I'm going to like change out. And I was just terrified. I was like, no one's going to know who I am. Also in the dream, I was riding on like the trains that they have at the mall. But yeah, it was because of that fear that I made this prop and another prop, which I will talk about when I get to it. The two biggest challenges to making this prop were flatness and movement. So first off, Pride is a shadow, and he is flat, and he moves a lot too. Normally when I make things, I save a bunch of reference photos and I look at them over and over again. But this was the first time that without even thinking, I found myself seeking out GIFs and videos and using those as references instead. So that told me that the sense of movement in him was very important. And the thing about the flatness that's difficult is that, you know, this is a three-dimensional object, but I felt it was really important to maintain that flatness. I ended up going to my old reliable craft foam to make the shadow. I used foam, hot glue, and paint. Oh, and also floral wire. So the floral wire was meant to give the foam structure, which it, in hindsight, didn't really need. But I would cut out a shape and put some floral wire in strategic places that were like a load-bearing shadow. And then I would hot glue stuff on top of it. You can see in this picture, there's a lot of hot glue. Then the eyes and the mouths are all cut out independently and were painted. And I stuck crazy hands all throughout. I had a lot of like wild shapes going on, and this was pretty fun to do. Another challenge would be the attachment, like attaching it to my body. And for that, I used snaps. I ended up building it up like as I was making it. So the snaps are attached to the back of the vest and to the back of the shadow. And the way that it is weightfully distributed is so that it doesn't, tip over too much to one side. It was incredibly sturdy to wear. Emphasis on the was. And I got the idea to use snaps partially by using deductive reasoning and also by looking at other people's Pride cosplays. There are not that many there are not that many Pride cosplayers, but I did find one who had posted on DeviantArt that they had like zip tied their shadows. Also, not that many people cosplay him with the shadows, but this person had, and they had zip tied the shadows to the back of their vest by like cutting a hole in it. So the snaps were a non-destructive way to do that. So that's the good side of the prop. The bad side is how I chose to finish it. I decided, even though the craft foam was already black, I wanted, I guess, to feel like I was doing something. So I painted it. I painted the black. And then I sealed it with a Mod Podge. And what this did is make the whole thing incredibly rigid, which was fine at first, but the more I had it, the more it started to wrinkle, and those wrinkles became very visible. I'll show more of that later, but let's actually go to the first photo shoots that I did. So the concept behind the shoot is that it would be a bath shoot. I love doing bath shoots. I haven't done one in a while, but I've done several. I'll throw up some pictures on the screen. So I wanted to try one with a male character. So that was the goal with this one. For the water itself, I got a bright red bath bomb and some skulls. I wanted it to look like he was bathing in the Philosopher's Stone. Like, isn't that edgy? And when they showed the stone, they show all of those like screaming heads and skulls. So that's what the skulls were in the water for. This was the main photo from the shoot, and several people who meant no harm told me that the skulls looked like onions. Like, that was their first thought when they saw them, and I thought, you were right, and that's why I don't post this picture anywhere anymore. Originally with this video, I was going to be, I was being rather self-conscious, and I was not going to share the stuff that I really didn't like. But I think that's actually important, and not sharing it would obfuscate how I've improved later on. So yeah, I really don't like this picture. Even then, I was struggling, and I guess this just exemplifies it very well. First off, my wig, it's like very blocky. And that was just a problem I had immediately in trying to make it look spiky, is I ended up making it look blocky. Then there's my makeup, which is almost seems non-existent. Like, I know I put makeup on. I know I made an attempt, but my face looks very bare. It doesn't feel like I'm in character. It feels more like I'm just me with a wig on. And then just my posing. I like the composition of the photo, and I like the quality of the photo, but it doesn't feel like him. And this was a problem that I had just relentlessly in my early attempts to do a photo shoot, which, like I said, was all I wanted. All I wanted was a good photo shoot. But I had a really hard time, like, channeling him. In general, I like doing the sad woman look, and I think I do it very well. So in this case, where you're having a character who's like the personification of confidence, it was quite difficult. And that was one reason I wanted to do this shoot, was to like challenge myself in doing more boy characters and characters who maybe don't look wistfully out the window. But yeah, this was rough. I also have these pictures. You'll notice that the gray suit is there. And yes, early on I did the gray suit outfit because, like I said, this was more about doing a photo shoot, so I wanted it to be diversified. But later on, when I attached myself to this being like a big cosplay, I kind of put the gray suit aside. It won't show up again in the video, and it still has problems now. Maybe one day I'll bring back the gray suit, but then I might make another, who knows how long this video will be. And some of these photos I like, and if you follow me on social media, you've probably seen them before. Some of them you might not have seen because I deleted them. This would be one of them. And this is all because of the wig. In some pictures, the wig looks fine. Those are the pictures I like. And in some of them, it just doesn't look right. And there are I remember sitting in front of the mirror being like, I hate this. Like, this cosplay is terrible. Why do I hate it though? And it was the wig. Like, I knew it was the wig, but I didn't know what I could do to fix it. So instead of re-explaining the wig conceptually, I'm actually going to show you a TikTok that I made several months ago.
Full Metal Alchemist.
I have to share with y'all how, due to my weird obsession, the Full Metal Alchemist live-action movie has made me feel like a clown. First off, live-action anime movies, no interest in watching it, blah 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 blah, never saw the first one. They put Pride in it, okay, now I have to watch it. And my obsession with Pride Full Metal Alchemist dates back to 2020 when I had nothing else to do and I realized how much I love Full Metal and I realized he was my favorite character. And being a cosplayer, of course I had to cosplay him. That's not what this is about. This is about his hair. So as you can see from this framed picture of him I keep in my room, he has a very simple haircut. You can just get a black wig for that, right? Wrong! He has very spiky hair, but the spike appears on different sides just depending on the scenario. I use science to determine that his haircut is actually one big spike in the front. I spent time looking at haircuts of real men. Notice how on the side it is short cropped and in the front and top it's a little bit long. That gives it that wave that goes in the front. So Pride's haircut is essentially a stylized version of this. During my time attempting to cosplay him, I have tried multiple textures and multiple lengths. Here's the first one where I did longer hair and I tried to make it wispy. Here's another take at it where I made it shorter and straighter. By this attempt, the wig was blocky and choppy. You can see I'm lying on the floor because I was overall defeated by this cosplay. Do you know what the movie did? I'm sorry, this is the only picture I have of him close up from the trailer. They put some gel in his hair, and it looks great.
Full Metal Alchemist.
Here's where the era of my relentless changes begins. And the thing about my changes is I would say about 25% of them were actually necessary to improve the costume. And the remaining 75% were things that I had imagined in my mind needed to be done because I had built this cosplay up to be something grander than what it was. Starting with the outfit, I really wanted to change my shorts. So the shorts I originally had that I had bought at the thrift store and dyed gray, the dye job on them was pretty patchy. And more importantly, the shorts themselves were not the right style. Oh, and they were also too wide in the waist, so that's a valid, normal reason to want a new pair of shorts. And these shorts became a weird point of fascination for me because the silhouette of them feels very modern. And the thing about Full Metal is it takes place in the 1900s, but it's very loose with its interpretation of the 1900s, which is totally fine. You know, there will be art of characters wearing like suits and ties and stuff. And then there's Winry who wears a miniskirt and it's like, okay. And I think a key detail of this whole cosplay process is that this did take place during 2020, which I had a lot of spare time on my hands, but compounded with that, I'm a little bit crazy and care about things that I shouldn't. So yeah, I went hard on like trying to find out about these shorts. I googled the history of shorts and I was like, when did shorts start to look like this? And I will tell you, I never found the answer, but I did find the perfect shorts. So these are Dickies uniform shorts, and I love them. These are the shorts exactly. It's shocking and alarming. There are a few times when I become strangely obsessed with something where it works out absolutely perfectly. And I think that's the only time something worked absolutely perfectly in this cosplay journey. So I just want to take a moment to celebrate these shorts. Next up is the vest, and this journey was a circle. So originally I bought a little boy's vest off Amazon. It fit me perfectly, and that was the one that I took apart and wanted to make into a pattern so that I could sew my own vest with the luxest of fabrics. I also have a supreme hatred of polyester. This is something that sort of developed from working with pre-made cosplays. I wasn't bothered by them too much at first, but the more I started to find my way as a cosplayer and find the things that I enjoy, I found that I really enjoy texture and fabric weight, and the generic uniform polyester fabric that they use for a lot of those pre-made cosplays doesn't have any of that, and they tend to use it on the entire costume. Same thing with spandex, that it just doesn't have the thing that I love. And these little boy vests that I was buying were polyester, so I wanted something that wasn't that. I also noticed that if you look at his vest in a lot of the art, it is not shaded fully black, but it has little dots on it. To me, this was texture. And not like he's wearing a bumpy vest, but that there was some kind of... to me, this meant that I needed to use something special. And I spent a lot of time looking over and over again for a vest that was anything but polyester. I'm thinking like cotton, velvet, corduroy. That's when I said, hold on, sit down, and go back to that Amazon vest that fit you perfectly. So yeah, I bought a duplicate of that, and that is what I use for my cosplay. That brings the costume part to a close. We have a shirt from my wardrobe. We have a duplicate of the same vest I had originally. We have the perfect shorts. Then some socks from my wardrobe. And some shoes from my wardrobe. Perfection.
Full Metal Alchemist.
For our next commercial break, I would like to take a word from our sponsor, me. So yes, this is my Etsy shop, Tip's Tiny Workshop, formerly Tiny Creature Adoption Agency. I began this in 2020 to sell needle-felted creatures. It was very fun. Near the end, I started to do a lot of commissions and stuff, but I ended up not having time to do it anymore, and I have only recently brought it back. One of the themes that's going to come up in this video is that there's a lot of things that I want to do that I either talk myself out of doing or simply don't do. And my Etsy shop is kind of one of them, where you have to put a lot of work into it to make it work. There's a chance it might not work at all, but you should at least try, and that's what I'm doing with my Etsy. Being able to make things like this has always been a minor dream of mine, and if I could get it to be even a little bit successful, that would be nice. Another reason I'm hoping to get my shop off the ground more is because hopefully next year I have some big plans in mind, and it would be really nice to be able to make money this way without getting a part-time job. I am old enough for a full-time job, but there's a lot of stuff going on right now in my mind that the other thing, I really hope that other thing works out and that I can just support myself with this for a little while. So yeah, to kind of leave that dire subject, this is my shop. I like to make hats. I love using felt, so everything that I make is made with felt. Most of what I have is hats. I've also started making pins, and I also want to occasionally list a needle felted doll. I've taken commissions for those too. Hopefully with my shop I can drum up more business for commissions as well. But I really like making characters, and I'm hoping that as I make more characters, people will want to buy them. So thank you for listening. I'm not begging you to buy from my shop. I just want you to be aware that my shop exists and to keep an eye out on it, because I'm looking forward to the things I will make and put on it.
Full Metal Alchemist.
Looking back, the thing that I learned the most making for this cosplay was the wig. Like every other part of this cosplay, I was able to fall back on a skill that I already had. And I already knew how to style wigs, but this really taught me how to style wigs. Or rather, it taught me my own approach to getting a wig like I want it. Because there are tons of ways to style wigs, and some things work better for others. So let's go back and look at the first wig, because this is the wig that I said I had on, and I would look at myself in the mirror and I'd be like, I hate this, but I don't know why. And I think this picture actually shows what I hated pretty well. The big issue is around my ears, the sideburns. So the sideburns on this are incredibly thick. Like thicker than his sideburns are, and probably thicker than a real human's sideburns would be. And I find sideburns to be so incredibly important. First off, for framing the face, but also for just making a wig feel right. This mostly comes up with dolls, but it does happen with real cosplay wigs too. Is I hate when the sideburns like float up off of the face and they don't stick to the face. So yeah, just a lot of my issues with wigs tend to come from sideburns and I guess bangs as well. The framing of the face is like so important. There's also these spikes. I hate this picture so much. And originally I wanted to do it very literally because, as I mentioned in the TikTok, his hair is short around the sides and then it's really spiky in the front. And that's what makes that spiky look that you see. So yeah, I did a bunch of spikes, but this just didn't work in real life. I had a big problem with trying to interpret this haircut literally, and it just didn't work out. Another thing in this picture that I hate is you can see I made the bangs like really long and really like stringy looking. They look greasy. So eventually I had to make those shorter. The wig that I was using originally was intended as a Roy Mustang wig. And I thought that would be a good match because it's the same series, similar haircut. And I will tell you now, with my new experience, with my hindsight, that I could have saved that wig, that original wig, with what I know now. But I didn't know that yet, so I got a new wig. That new wig was an Arda wig, and immediately, right out the gate, I was overthinking it. So that Roy Mustang wig was jet black, which is what Salim's hair color is. But I have this thing where I don't like to use jet black hair for myself when I can. I usually prefer to get a very dark, they usually call it natural brown, and that is my actual hair color. And to me, it's like, of course it'll look good on me. That's my natural hair color. And I feel like it lends some realism to the character, even though I know people in real life do have jet black hair. I did it with Darja, and I did it with Cassandra, and it worked really well. So I tried to replicate that again here, but I found out that Pride's black hair is actually really important to his look. I also styled the heck out of this one. This was before I learned to not do so many spikes. I think this wig was the last time I did so many spikes. And one thing about Arda wigs is that they're famous for being very thick, very luscious, and being able to be styled extremely. Actually, I don't know if it's the wigs themselves that lend well to that, but Arda has made a brand for itself of extreme wig styling, which is incredibly impressive. I am not talking down the skill, but it's not the style of wig that I like to do. And this is when I came to terms with Arda despite it being my go-to wig shop for many years before this, was not good for the little boy haircuts that I wanted to be doing now. There's also a fair amount of intersections that happened while working on this cosplay. Like, this cosplay wasn't the only thing I was doing in my life or in my cosplay life at the moment. So while working on this wig is when I fell in love with Shinji from Evangelion. It was arguably because of styling this wig that I fell in love with Shinji, because I did a whole video on it. I had watched a show. It freaked me out. And then the new movie came out. I really love Utada Hikaru, so I was excited for the new movie, not for the movie, but for the new song. And I thought, I think I'm gonna throw together a Shinji cosplay because, you know, like, I'll probably get some good views or whatever. This wig looks just like Shinji's hair. It's a really easy outfit to put together. And by doing that, I fell in love with Shinji. And I actually made him his own wig, kind of based off of what I had learned on this one. And that was when I started using those cheapo wigs that I bought from Mercari. And Shinji helped me with this cosplay. But this cosplay was still not done. After so many styling attempts, this wig was pretty much done for. So guess what? I got another new wig. And if that seems wasteful, don't worry. I didn't throw away the old one. I put it in my stash. I love to have wefts, so it's in my weft stash now. There was wasted money, but not a wasted wig. After noticing that Shinji and Salim had a similar haircut, I thought it would be good to look for a new wig made for a character who has that same haircut, because then it would come pre-cut and it would save me a lot of time and a lot of stress. So I found the character, I do not remember his name, from Fire Force, who has a similar haircut. I bought a wig that was designed for him. This is from the Chinese company Bluebeard. I really like their wig. Found their Bluebeard wig for him, and I bought it, and it was not cut for him. But this was in fact the last wig that I bought. It is the wig that I have on my current finished cosplay, though it went through a lot. And I also started to take decent pictures because by this point I had already started my YouTube channel. These are from June of 2021, so it's been a year since my obsession began. For this round of styling, I kept it longer. Arguably too long, because later on I would cut it to be shorter, but this already looks better, and you can see that it's not accurate in the sense that there are not as many spikes. It doesn't follow the hair pattern that I had so thoroughly studied, but it looks good, and that's what matters. I also made this helpful graphic showing the different versions of the wig I had done so far. Let's look at them together. On the far left, we have the first wig, which was really blocky looking and had sideburns that were too thick. But then we have the middle wig, which was the Arta wig that was brown instead of black, and I tried to do more extreme spikes on. I would say I had it almost there in the first one, then I took a step backwards with the second one. Then we have the new one, the third one, which is longer, but you can kind of see by zooming in on the forehead that it just lays better, and I think this is part of the thing I like about the Bluebeard wigs, is they're so soft, and I felt like it conformed to my head a lot better than the original one. So looking at all three of them together, I am glad that I finally ended up with that last wig, but I could have saved that first wig if I knew what I was doing. At this point, the cosplay was totally wearable. Here's an updated picture that I took when I filmed my Mega House King Bradley figure review. And in hindsight, the wig actually looks really good. It looked maybe better than it looks now. Looking back at these pictures, I might go back and style what I had a little bit more. This is probably a lesson in appreciating what you have and not being super critical of yourself. But it's good. It feels good to be saying that, especially since everything's been kind of rough so far. But yeah, so at this point, it was wearable, and the only thing stopping it from being 100% complete was the prop. And before I get into the prop, I want to take a minute to talk about makeup, which is not something I usually talk about because I don't know that much about makeup. Also, a big part of my makeup is contacts. Cosplay contacts are not for everybody. There's plenty of resources online about the good and the bad things about them, but I really like wearing cosplay contacts. I think it adds something extra to the costume. And also, I wear glasses, so unless I want to be blind at a convention, I like to have cosplay contacts. Much like the wig, I ended up going through 3 different cosplay contact looks before I found one that I was satisfied with for Pride. So here's that picture from earlier that I hated. My makeup is very faint and I'm going to focus on the eyes. I lined the top and then I did a little curve on the bottom. I don't remember which character I had been cosplaying before this that made me start doing that little curve for, but that curve really didn't work for him. I think it gave the eyes a roundness that they didn't need. And also, believe it or not, I am wearing contacts in this picture. These are dark brown dolly eye contacts. I had these before and I used them for Freya and Noir. I loved them because they look like my normal eye color, but they just make my eyes bigger, and it was a super cute detail. So I thought that since Salim is a little kid character, giving him these big cutesy eyes would be a good idea. But I learned that the big cutesy eyes work well with longer hair, but with shorter hair, it somehow made my face look really disproportionate. So here's the second look from when I was filming the King Bradley figure review video. You can see that I'm not doing the little eyeliner swoop at the bottom of my eye. I just have stuff on the top and it looks much sharper. So I think that suited his character a lot better. And you can see I have different contacts. So by this point in my Salim cosplay journey, I had him on the back burner. And I actually bought these contacts for Nene from Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. And I bought these with the intention of them doubling for Pride. And I ended up not liking them. For starters, they were meant to be two-toned to look like the eyes from the Toilet Bound Hanako-kun characters. But the contacts weren't weighted, so they would spin around in my eyes. I also got them in gold because I wanted to be Hanako. And they would make me look cross-eyed. On my Instagram at the time, anytime I would see these cosplay contacts come up in an advertisement, I would screenshot it to my story and I'd be like, do not buy these. So yeah, I hated these contacts. The other thing is that they're purple. And of course, if you're familiar with Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, you would say yes. Pride has purple eyes. After he eats gluttony, his eyes turn purple. But if you look at the manga, Pride's eyes are red. And Brotherhood did this with Envy too. They just gave some of the homunculi purple eyes, I guess, to broaden up the color palette. But yeah, if you look at Arakawa's colored work of the characters, they all have red eyes. And I at first didn't notice this, so I didn't care, and that's why I was using the purple contacts for him. And I could guarantee you that hardly anyone else cares, but I care. So once I learned that his eyes are red in the manga, and I prefer the logic through which his eyes work in the manga, I guess this will be a tangent now, but yeah, in Brotherhood, after he eats gluttony, his eyes turn purple and they stay purple for the rest of the series. In the manga, only when his shadows are out do his eyes turn red, and you can see them switch back to normal when his shadows go away later in the manga. And that is what led me to my final look, which uses red eyes. I love these contacts the most out of all of the ones I went with. I will be using red eyes to cosplay him from now on. Also, the makeup, while not great, is better than the first makeup.
Fullmetal Alchemist.
Doing laundry is important. Today I will wash the shirt. The first step is to punch it. Now stomp on it.
Throw
it.
This is bad.
He's right. Something's coming. Something awful.
Full Metal Alchemist.
Ah, the props. The thing that will bring me from fancy little waiter to fancy little boy. So before I cover more about the shadow, I want to talk about an extra thing that I did. That's right, I felt the need to do even more. But this actually wasn't that weird of a thing to do. I wanted something to hold, and when you're like at a con, it's always nice to have a prop that you can hold because it makes it easier to pose. But yeah, one of the first things I did when I became interested in him was I watched a lot of his scenes in the anime and I looked at a lot of his scenes in the manga, and he doesn't move a lot. He kind of just stands there while his shadows move around him, which doesn't work very well for if you want to take a cool picture or if you want to come up with a signature pose, hence wanting something to hold. So the holdable prop that I decided on was Al's head. I was telling a friend, it's pretty bad when you're down to cosplaying a scene. Like, no one knows who you are, so you're gonna have to cosplay a single scene. And that's what I did. I thought the owl helmet would be a cool prop though because it is recognizable. You know, maybe people can't recognize Pride right away, but everyone knows what Owl's head looks like. And I like villains, and that was a good villain moment. I thought it would be like painful when people saw me. That was what I wanted, to bring grief when people see me. And I know a good bit about working with foam, so I thought this would be easy to do. But it would seem that Full Metal was popular I say it would seem as if I don't already know. Full Metal was popular before cosplay got really mainstream. So there are materials out there for cosplaying Al, but not as many as there would be if he was like a Genshin Impact character. So a lot of the stuff I found was like paper models or people's highly ambitious projects where they made him out of steel. I couldn't find a lot of easily accessible, like, here's a pattern for Al's helmet. If you do have one, it's too late. I'm past that already, but I'm happy for you, and I'm happy for anyone else who would get to use it. So yes, I had trouble right away. I tried to pattern my own. That didn't work out. And then I thought I might try to find one that was pre-made, which kind of sucked because I thought I would be saving money by making my own. So first thing I found was a 3D printed one. It was a little pricey, but you would pay the person. They would 3D print it for you and they would send it to you. I was excited. I was like, oh, I'm going to learn how to paint this. It'll be like a great way to up my skills. Maybe I'll get an airbrush, yada, yada, yada. That one didn't work out. First, they said that they were having problems with their equipment and it was like taking a really long time. And I was like, that's fine. And then they sent me like a refund, a partial refund. And I was like, oh, that's fine. I'm in no hurry. And then one day they just refunded me the whole thing. So that one didn't work out. And after that, I thought I would have to just give up on the owl helmet. But then on one of my embarrassingly regular browsing sessions through Surugaya, I found this Alphonse Elric piggy bank. And I was like, no way, that's his head. And it said that it was really big, but I didn't believe it until it came. It's absolutely perfect. It's his head. I mean, maybe his head's bigger. I don't know. No, it's perfect. Like, yeah, I could not have asked for anything better. All I had to do was screw out the part where the money goes into, and it's perfect. I can wear it on my head, and when I hold it next to me, it doesn't look too small. I was worried it would look too small because I'm not actually a 10-year-old boy, but no, it looks really big, really sizable in my hands, and I am super excited for it. I'm super excited to have it. My original plan, which I of course procrastinated on, was to paint it really nice and weather it as if it was the original 3D printed one that I wanted. But I carried it around with me a lot, and I noticed that I was carrying it in my waist, like where you would carry a baby. And if it was painted, I'm afraid it would rub off a lot. So in the end, I decided not to paint it. I think it would be cool to maybe replace the fake hair on there with a strand of like wig hair so that I can hold it by the hair. But that's another thing that I thought I would do like a year ago and I haven't done yet. And I am making the video right now. I am going to finish this video. So if I ever put the hair on there, you will see it on Instagram, but not in this video.
Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh my, this purse is so big and heavy.
Hold it right there, ma'am. I'll be taking that.
Full Metal Alchemist.
And we are back at the shadows. So I'm very happy with how my original piece came out. I really like how it looked. I like how it fit. It was very wide, which gave me concerns for cons, but people walk around with crazier things. The issue really came about in how I finished it, and I think that being dissatisfied with how I finished it led me into this other spiral that I'm about to go on. So here's another one of my pictures. This was one of the last ones that I took before I officially began round 2 of the cosplay. And this picture is a mixed bag, but I think it represents this whole thing very well. Because I think it's a really cool picture. I really like it. But the reason I have my eyes covered is because I didn't like how I looked in the cosplay. And another thing that came up during editing is that the shadows were just wrecked. I had been wearing them around the house, you know, I did my bath shoot with them, blah, blah, blah. And they were very creased. I think I still have the original unedited version of this picture. If I do, I'll put it up. And I had to edit out a lot of wrinkles in the shadows, which I really didn't like. And I was very much thinking, this thing will not survive an actual trip to a convention. And I also felt like what the whole piece was missing was texture. I am obsessed with texture. I'm realizing this now, and it's probably detrimental because that's the same thing that messed me up with the vest. So yeah, this thing was fine, but I decided that it would be really cool, it would be really neat if it had texture. So before I decided on foam, I had kicked around a couple different materials to make the shadows out of. And I think doing foam was my saving grace because it actually worked. But one of the ideas that I had was to use felt. Either needle felting or a form of wet felting. If you're not familiar with wet felting, needle felting is dry, you don't use any water. And wet felting, you use water, and it's an interesting way to create, with a lot of work, to create like 3D sculpture-esque things. They used to make hats with wet felting. There you go. And I planned using this method knowing that it would take a really, really long time. But in a sense, that was part of it. Like, yes, this will keep me busy for the next 40 years. And yeah, I had given up on the idea of using wet felting for the structure itself. But I thought it would be cool to instead use foam as the skeleton, as the structure, and do a covering of felt. The felt would give me an interesting texture, and it would also allow me to mix different forms of black, as if having my shadow prop for my shadow character be pure black wasn't enough for me. But speaking seriously, I think it was that I wanted to somehow capture that sense of movement, and I thought that maybe I could do that with a variation of colors. And this plan to do a felt covering followed me till almost the very end. I had gotten a bunch of black wool that I started needle felting together. I called it the pelt, and I was going to cover the skeleton with the pelt. After that, I thought I would use sheet felt so that the skeleton could have a covering. And eventually, I finally abandoned the idea because I was like, this is weird and not possible. Another idea which I abandoned much quicker but gave a fair amount of thought was using puppetry. And this was once again because I wanted the shadow to move in somehow. I thought maybe if I can't do an optical illusion, I can actually make it move. I have never made a puppet before. I looked up a lot of stuff about puppets. One thing, I thought it would be cool to see if I could move the arms somehow. I looked into being able to move the eyes. This was all difficult to do because it's a flat thing, and ultimately I abandoned the puppetry. One, because it was going nowhere, and two, because I valued the flatness of the prop over anything else. Like, I thought it was just most important that it be flat. And recalling all of these things out loud, like, I had actually forgotten about the puppetry thing until I started talking again. This really does have 2020 vibes. And the last idea that I had, which is the one that I would credit the most with delaying this project and with haunting me for, I think it was a full year that this haunted me. Like, I made friends with people. I nurtured friendships that I did not have when I first got this idea. So yes, in my original prop, the eyes and the teeth were all done with craft foam. Same thing as the body. And I thought, you know what would be really cool and would give it, if I can't have texture from a pelt, then I'll have texture on the eyes and the teeth, and I will do them in resin. And for this, I looked into how to do resin eyes. I knew exactly what kinds of eyes I wanted to do, and I think it would have been really cool. I went as far as like being on the website to buy the resin. I had my cart full, and it was going to be about $70, and I was like, all right, put down that $70 investment. And I just didn't. And I think that is our cue for a quick little segment. Alright, so at some point when deciding to make the video, I knew I would want to sit down and have like a real talk. That's why I'm filming this with my phone to make it authentic. And I'm also sitting on the floor to make it authentic. And I'm holding my doll just because I thought that would add to the mood. So yeah, this cosplay project was a source of great frustration for me. And it was also a lot of like, why is this happening? Why is this happening this way for me? And I do want to say, like, even though I think a good bit of my YouTube channel unintentionally deals with my obsession with this one character, everything that happened here had nothing to do with the character. This happened because of the point in my life in which it took place. And I think that if this had been a really fancy cosplay, like some kind of Sakizo cosplay, and I had said, yes, I spent 2 years deliberating on my Sakizo and it's finished, that would maybe be less embarrassing. Like, what I'm saying is this could have happened with any cosplay. It happened to happen with this one, and it's embarrassing because it's such a simple cosplay. But kind of at the crux of this is that I don't know what I want to do with my life. And it has become harder to avoid over the years. You know, like when I was a kid, people always ask children what it is they want to do when they get older, and you can say something. And I just never had anything I wanted to do. I would always say I wanted to be an artist, which is, you know, nice, but I never visualized it. It was just like, I like to color. I'll say artist. I was kind of in a lot of the heavy decision-making parts of life, like high school, college. I was kind of just checked out and just following along with everything that you do. Like, you go to high school, you go to college, and then on top of that, I finished college right before 2020. I was kind of catastrophizing a little bit before I graduated, and then I graduated, and it was kind of like but then 2020 hit, and I had some time to just do whatever. And that's my dog. And it was after that, and once I was out in the world, that it really started to sink in that I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And people would give me, they'd suggest things to me, and I would be like, well, I don't want to do that. But it's like, well, who are you to say I don't want to do that when you don't know what you want to do at all? And I think it frustrates me because I'm at the point now where I have actually started wanting things, and then I feel bad because I'm like, other people want those things when they're like 17. Like, you're way past that. Like, it feels like I missed something, like, oh, I didn't pick a college based on what I thought I could do. I picked a college because it was close to my house. So, okay, so the way that this kind of ties into the cosplay is that I had that $70 that this resin was going to cost me. And I did manage to get a short, contract position job, which was really great. I really liked it. And I was making money, not a lot of money, but more than I had ever made before. And that's why I was so frustrated, because I was like, why aren't you spending this $70 to get started on your little resin project? And it was just seeing myself not do the thing I said I would do over and over again that was so frustrating to me. And I kind of realized that there's a lot of things that I've always just talked myself out of doing. This YouTube channel is kind of, having a YouTube channel was never really a dream of mine, but a lot of the things that I'm doing on my channel are things that I had wanted to do when I was maybe a teenager and told myself I couldn't do, or things that I thought it maybe wasn't worth learning to do, like, oh, I'll never learn how to paint Nendoroids. And that's one of the reasons that I have decided to do that. Like, the fact that I painted a doll on my own, that's like, yo! I've always wanted to learn Japanese. And I took I kind of got screwed over with the Japanese program. That was fine. But why don't I know Japanese? I wanted to learn it since I was 12. What's going on here? I think there's just a lot of things that I have always wanted to do but never really gave much thought to, and now I'm like, you gotta do those things. So yeah, I guess I'm trying not to spill my guts in the Celine Bradley cosplay video, but I also feel like this cosplay is very emblematic of that struggle. And the fact that this cosplay has taken me so long, and the fact that there's a lot of things I want to learn how to do that I haven't learned how to do, it's, taken from me. It's taken other things from me. I really want to cosplay Hanako-kun. And I kept saying, when you're done with your Pride cosplay, you start on Hanako. And I haven't, because I can't, because I haven't finished that one cosplay yet, Stuff like that. This whole thing, to me, is just so representative of this thing. And when I saw it happening, and when I finally saw it for what it was, it's like all those wasted years. Or, I've got to do something about this. And I think that's my current mindset, going forward, is I've got to do something about this. And there's a lot of I still struggle a lot with actually doing things, dedication, okay, you want this, don't you? And you need to do it. And where this finally came to fruition with the cosplay is that I had another cosplay for Anime Week in Atlanta. I'm going to do a video on it as I talk about how bad I am at actually getting things done. I'm going to do a video on a cosplay that I made for Anime Week in Atlanta. And I made the commitment to do this cosplay with a friend. So it was I'm 100% have to do this because I have another person involved, which was a good motivator. And I was pretty much done with that cosplay, and it was the night before the convention, and my friend was only stayed for like half the day. I wanted to stay really late, and I was like, you know what? It would be fun if I could bring a second cosplay to walk around in at night. And I was looking at all the cosplays I'd had. In the past year, I had gone to like MomoCon, and I wore Alistair. I wore Team Rocket Gold, and I was kind of tired of wearing them. I was gonna pick them again because like they were good night cosplays, and I was like, I don't want to wear those cosplays anymore. I want to wear something new, and I want to wear something I'm excited about. And I was like, you should wear Pride. And so the other thing I forgot to talk about is that his wig, that beautiful wig, like in hindsight, I'm like, Joe, that wig looks so good. I took it apart. Because it was taking me forever to do the cosplay. I just realized I didn't put on any makeup for this. Oh man, it's authentic. So since the cosplay was taking so long, and it was actually when I started working on this guy, I started to have trouble with his wig, and I needed to add wefts to it, and I didn't have any other black wefts, so I was like, you wig, I'm gonna take you apart, because I was like, you've had this wig just hanging around for so long, and I'm sure you've already made it like 5 times. You can make it even better the next time. So yeah, I took this wig apart, and this was like the week before Anime Week in Atlanta, when I randomly decided, I was like, you need to wear Pride. This will change you, for your mental health. You need to wear Pride. So I think I slept 3 hours that night. I found a different wig that I had. It was from my Shakimaru cosplay, which I wore a regrettably few number of times. It's actually not a black wig. It's very dark purple. And I took that wig, I took the wefts from that wig, and I re-wefted my Pride wig, which I'm telling you, it was like maybe 30% of the wefts were still in the wig. And that's why earlier in the video when I said like, oh, maybe I should style it again. Yeah, that's why, because I undid that wig and redid it. But I actually really liked how it looked. Like, the purple was kind of exciting, like, ooh, you see it in the sunlight. The way that the wefts like laid was really nice. And it may also just be because I had worn the wig and restyled it so many times, but the wefts just like, I could just pull it like with no styling product in it, and it would look good. And it was like, whoa. So yeah, I wore that to the con, and you know what? My shadows were not finished. And I just wore it anyway. This was a freeing experience. I brought the head with me, and the wig was, it was whatever. I didn't wear the contacts. I had them. I tried to put them on, but it like burned my eyes because I didn't soak them first. I like wore my glasses around. Like, it was like a liberating experience, because I'm kind of uptight about my cosplays. That's something that I think kind of ruined the hobby for me early on, and I've been trying to fix that. So I just wore the cosplay, and I had a great time. Like, I felt so comfortable in it. I was really happy, and it was like, yeah, to MomoCon this upcoming year, I'm gonna wear it. I'm gonna wear it with the shadows, and I'm gonna have a good time. And I did take the original shadows apart because I was supposed to redo them with resin, and I never did. That was another thing, like another liberating experience, was just being like, you know what? You're never gonna do this, and that's okay. So I remade it with foam, and I think I'm gonna cut myself off right here and cut into showing how I made the second pair of shadows. So my 2 big regrets in this whole fiasco would be taking apart that last wig that I showed and taking apart the shadows. There were issues with how I had finished the shadows, which I mentioned earlier, but I think that if I had never taken them apart, it would have been fine. But we are where we are. I needed to remake the shadows, and this time I wanted to base it on one of my favorite pictures of Pride. For the first shadows, I sort of built it as I like built it off of my back, and I built it with balance in mind, and it ended up I think very busy. So this time I really wanted to have that same shape that he has in this picture, just because I love it so much, and my final shadow ended up being a lot simpler because of that. And I did a lot of this while my bedroom was being renovated, so in case you're wondering why it looks like I'm crafting in a warehouse, that's the reason. After the main part was assembled, I moved on to the eyes and the mouths, and I liked how I had done the eyes the first time. But one thing about the mouths is that when I was referencing him for the first shadows, I was looking at the scenes after he had eaten gluttony, and at that point in the story his teeth turn pointy, I guess to symbolize that he's become carnivorous now. But prior to that, and like most of the time, his teeth are flat. He has like human teeth, which is really quite creepy. But I wanted him this time to have those normal human teeth. And an idea I had briefly entertained with the teeth was stacking the foam and using a Dremel to make like 3D teeth. That's something people do a lot when they make cosplay armor. But after using the Dremel for just a couple minutes, I was like, you know what? I could learn how to do this, but this is kind of out of my comfort zone. And, you know, we're at the point in the cosplay where I'm accepting that I need to just stick in my comfort zone. So I decided not to use the Dremel, and I did the teeth pretty much the same as I had done the other ones, except I painted the flat teeth designs on. And for painting the teeth designs, I focused a lot on like getting shadow and trying to make it look as decent as I could. I referenced some pictures of real teeth, but I'm not a painter. I don't know, I'm not like a photorealistic painter, but I am really happy with how the teeth came out. And that finishes up the shadow prop. It is much less busy than the last one, and you know, I also liked the last one. I think it had a great amount of wiggliness and craziness, but equally I am pleased with this one. And it's not a one-to-one recreation, because as an homage to my earlier plans of using felting, I made the last minute decision to add some pieces of felt to the sides. One reason that I really liked that picture of Pride that I showed earlier is because the shadows are very inky. They're sort of melting and dissipating away. And that's not something I could really recreate with the foam, but I thought the felt would be a really good way to do that because it's kind of wispy and it fades up into nothing. So I'm really glad that I thought to add those. So now it kind of seems like we're done. And that might seem like a poor way to end all of this. And that's because it is. So I can't just put together the last bit of this cosplay in my warehouse-like room and then call it done. Not after these 2 years of suffering. So there's only one way to end this project, and that is the way it began. With a photo shoot.
Full Metal Alchemist. Full Metal Alchemist.
It's been so long since I have fully covered a photo shoot on my channel, I guess outside of earlier in this video, I used to want to make more like cosplay photo shoot videos, but it kind of got away from me, and admittedly my cosplay videos don't get that much attention, but I'm not making this video because I want it to get attention. I kind of don't think it will get much. I'm making it because I want to make it. In my last photo shoot, I struggled a bit with the concept. First off, I started with the bath shoot, then I did some other general shadowy photo shoots, and I had a really hard time channeling the character and feeling like anything I was doing was really solid. And since then, I think with the help of the other photo shoots that I've done, namely Shinji and Wirt, where I went out of my house to do both of them and didn't enjoy it as much as I thought, what I've really learned about myself is that I like to take a very elaborate backdrop that I have constructed rather than going out to a location and taking a picture. And that realization is absolutely what drove this shoot. So I've been thinking for a while what it is I want to do with Pride. And for a long time, I've been taking it very literally. I love to use the series, like the source material, to inspire me visually. And I think that kind of sticking to that idea that I needed to imitate the world itself is what was holding me back so much. So I wanted to instead capture the essence of Pride, the feelings that you might get from his character. The aesthetic that I decided on was that of a vanitas painting. Vanitas means vanity or emptiness or futility, and this was a genre of paintings that was meant to remind you of death, and you would have these very full like scenes of, normal still life things like fruit and books and flowers. But then when you look closely at them, the fruit is rotting. There's a skull in there. The flowers are dead. There's flies and bugs all over everything. And I think that the juxtaposition between like a beautiful still life and a reminder of death, and also the name like vanity, I think that really exemplifies Pride really well. Aesthetically, it has this richness about it. There's a sense of wealth and power, but when you look at it, it's not good. Also, I just really love Baroque flower paintings. I love maximalism, and I wanted to create something like that. So this is the set that I created. This was actually really fun because I own a lot of things that I think go with this aesthetic really well. And also, I took these pictures right after Christmas, and I spent all of Christmas eating decadently, so we had tons of sweets and attractive looking food laying around. I tried to add as many details as I could to make it visually interesting, things like texture and the light. The image I had in mind was something of a twisted display of power. I wanted to call back to the scene when he possesses Al, and also when he grabs Al's head and swings it around. I mean, that's what I'm calling back to by even having the head be part of my cosplay. It took a couple of tries to get this right. At first I tried sitting in the chair. I was trying to give father vibes like, oh, here I am strong, I am on a chair, and I am looking down at you. But that didn't work out, so then I tried sitting, and I always make the same face in my pictures, so I tried to make a different face, but that was clearly a bad idea. So then after that, it was just different forms of lying down in the chair and trying to make it a pleasing angle, both for my body and for my face. The final element I incorporated was the apple that was sitting on the table next to me. I think first it was because I wanted a tasty bite of apple, but afterwards I thought it would be good to have something in my other hand. And between you and me, I really don't like forbidden fruit / poison apple imagery. I find it really cliche. I mean, unless it plays a part in your series, then I'm not crazy about it, but I have to admit that an apple with a bite taken out of it is a very sumptuous and maybe like nonchalant detail that you can add into your photo. And this is the picture I ended up going with. Let me tell you some of the things I like about it. First off, there's my face. I like the way my face looked. When you're taking pictures of yourself, or I guess in general when you're being photographed, it's difficult to know what your expression is. I guess unless you were a model. But sometimes it'll feel like I'm making a really cool face and I'll look at the picture and it either looks dumb or like inscrutable, like you can't even tell I'm making an expression. But I really like the expression in this one. It has sort of a "you are nothing" look. Like I'm looking at Al's head and I'm like, you are nothing in my childlike hands. So yeah, I really like that. Then we have the way I'm holding Al's head. There were a couple, I guess, things I had in mind with holding Al's head. One would be like to press it against my head and stare into its eyes. But I really like this because of just, once again, the way I am gazing into it. Then there's the apple, which is there but not taking up a big amount of real estate. It just keeps my hand full. Then we have my body. There were a lot of pictures where my body looked maybe like too big or really uncomfortable, and I feel like in this picture I look very comfortable. I like the way my legs are sitting, even like the way the underside of my shoe is showing. I really like that. I guess if there was one thing about my body that I would fix, it would be that I had the rest of my shoe in the frame, but I didn't even notice that till right now, so I think we're good there. And here's the edited version. It's been a long time since I've done a photo shoot and a long time since I've edited a photo. And something I've been thinking about lately is that I don't really have a style for color grading. Color grading is when you use the colors in the photo to help tell a story. And usually when I take a picture, I focus a lot on the act of taking the picture itself, setting up the set. But then when it comes to editing it, I just get rid of a color cast or make the colors brighter, things like that. But I've been really wanting to explore how I can use color grading to enhance my visuals. So for this one, I looked at the Vanitas paintings that inspired me. I noticed they had a lot of rich colors and a lot of yellow cast. So that's what I did. I enhanced my colors, like my blue, I made it richer in the dark sections and lighter in the corner. I really love that variation that it gives to the photo. Then I just boosted the yellows on everything. I'm really proud of how the table area came out, like made the cake look yellower, made the flowers look yellower, and then on the doily I like enhanced the yellows coming off of the light, but I also enhanced the blues in the shadows. For the pillar that has the light and the plant on it, I added a lot of yellow to that. And I also really like how my skin ended up blending into the chair. It sort of creates a negative space, with like the negative space being me as the subject of the photo. And I think it really makes the blacks of my hair and the vest look good. Harkening back to the Vanitas theme, I have all of the mini tables of things around me. There isn't a skull, but you could say that Al's head is the skull. And none of the fruit is rotten, because that would be gross. But the cake is like cut into, so it's a cake, but it's not a pretty cake, and that's as far as I'm going on that. I really love how this picture came out. I think it's one of my favorite things that I've done in a long time. Admittedly, this is a really embarrassing photo to have of yourself. Like, when I see it as a cosplay and I see it as a character, then it's like, yeah, this is a super cool photo. But I also think about the people who know me in real life, and they're like, is that you on the throne holding a head with an apple? So yeah. It's really interesting to me how personal cosplay can be, or how impersonal it can be. And I don't mean impersonal in a bad way. You can wear a costume, for a weekend to have fun with your friends, and that's it. And there's something good in that too. And there's also something good in spending a long time making every version of a character, making everything screen accurate. Cosplay definitely exists on like a spectrum. And this video ended up being a lot more personal than I meant it to be. This cosplay ended up being like a bigger deal than it should have been. But I felt like that kind of stuff was important to show, because to me that is part of the cosplay. Like, that is part of the project. Whatever I was going through when I made it, whatever reason I chose to make a costume, is part of the costume. And sometimes it goes well. Sometimes you make everything in like a week and it looks great and it's a moment of triumph, and sometimes it doesn't, but you can still find something good on the other side of that. In this case, I have a cosplay that I really like, I have a character that I really like, and when I wear it, I feel good because I know what I went through. And this isn't the first time that something like this has happened to me. When I made my cosplay of Gold from Pokemon, who is one of my favorite characters, one of my favorite cosplays, and is a cosplay that I feel equally comfortable in. When I first made it, I did not like it at all. Like, I felt awkward in it. And it was over time and really honing in on the details that like I didn't like, and maybe letting go of some preconceived notions that I had, that I arrived at liking the cosplay. So I think right now everything that I went through to finish this one is like fresh, but in time it'll be behind me and it will make the costume only better. So I am now finished. And I will make other videos that are not an hour and a half long.